9, 8. Oh, we're alive. Peace, love, and blessings, everyone, and welcome back to your Black is STEM platform, the STEM Files, the voice of STEM talent in Black culture. And tonight we have a very special treat. We have our sister, Naeemah Cushmeer, our meteorologist. We're talking about rain, hail, snow, and earthquakes, understanding winter storms. Tune in, tune in, tune in for more after this video, family. Let's get into it.
You believe in these false prophets, I say I bet he lying. No football, New York City Giants. Girl dad, rest in peace to Kobe Bryant. When we teaching our babies, we teach them heavy science. Heavy science. Heavy science. When we teaching our women, we teach them heavy science. Heavy science. Heavy science. When we teach men, we teach them heavy.
Again, family, welcome back to your Black is STEM platform, the STEM Files, the voice of STEM talent in Black culture, where we do our best to highlight the best and brightest in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I am your humble co-host, Jabril Muhammad, aka Jabrilian Engineer. I'm a civilian mechanical engineer with the United States Navy, focusing on naval ship fluid systems with a background in material science and engineering, the study of the various material classes and how their different structures can lend themselves to be used in different applications, making things stronger, lighter, faster, more efficient, etc. I am always joined by my co-host, Tariq Muhammad, aka tariqcardiac. He's a biomedical research scientist with a background in cardiovascular pathobiology, the study of how diseases form in the heart and blood vessels. Family, we again have a great show planned for you tonight. We have part two with our sister Naeemah Cushmeer, our meteorologist. And again, we are talking about rain, hail, snow, and earthquakes, understanding winter storms. So as we get into that, I want to kind of lay the groundwork for tonight's conversation and go into a little bit of something before we start. So winter storm warnings were in effect in more than a half dozen states early this week, especially in parts of the Northeast, where tens of thousands of people were without power. The STEM Files is here to shed light on the situation. We have Sister Naeemah Cushmeer returning on tonight to talk about that. So, without further ado, I want to introduce the summer present to all our Sister Naeemah Cushmeer. Assalamu alaikum, sis. How are you?
Walaikum salam, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. All praise to Allah. Happy to be back on the platform with you, to welcome you back. We had a great time the first time, and there's just so much more we can go into. And inshallah, we'll be blessed to tackle some more topics tonight. So, for those who may be seeing you and engaging with you for the first time, could you give us like a brief introduction about who you are, a bit of your background in meteorology, and kind of what leads you to today?
Yeah. So I've always, well, actually, I my interest in meteorology began when I was a child. Funny thing is, I was afraid of thunderstorms. But once I learned about them, I got over that fear. But I was 10 years old when I definitely realized I wanted to be a meteorologist. So so that's what I did. I went to college, and then I went on to work as a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. And then I left a few years ago, and now I'm just on my own and exploring writing right now. But my love of meteorology has never ended. I do like writing, so I'm trying to hone that skill because that's something I always was interested in as well, but not as much as meteorology. So that's where I am right now. But yeah, my love of the weather, I doubt that will never end, because it's something I look at the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning, and well, one of the first things I do when I wake up in the morning, and one of the last things I do before going to bed.
Yes, ma'am. All praise is due to Allah. Definitely your passion shows forth. Like from the first time we had you on, I could tell how much meteorology had become a part of your personality in terms of like not only your knowledge, but how you spoke about it, When you mentioned, just very quickly, you mentioned writing and honing on that. Were you talking about technical writing specifically, or some other form of writing?
No, just more writing, casual writing. Um, like writing articles. I've written blog articles. So sometimes I get these ideas in my head, and the best way to get them out is to write them out. So I did write for a little bit for one company. I wrote articles, and it was interesting because I didn't choose the topics. They were given to me, so that was a bit of a challenge, but it was interesting, but the pay wasn't so great. So I'm exploring other options right now. But I do enjoy writing.
Yes, ma'am. All praise is due to Allah. Before we go any further, family, just so for those who are watching, thank you again. This is at tariqcardiac and at Jabrillion_engineer. We are live on YouTube and Facebook, live on YouTube and Facebook at the STEM Files on YouTube and at the STEM Files FB, at the STEM Files FB on Facebook. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Make sure to share this live, comment, get your notes, pads, and pens ready. We're going to get into some things very deeply, or to a certain depth on the show. As we move further, we mentioned kind of going into some specific terms. We have one of our favorite things to do on the platform is give a bit of a presentation shortly. So before we get into our sister's presentation, we wanted to kind of unpack a couple of terms, kind of help us relate better to what she will be presenting us. So the first term that we want to unpack is atmospheric river. So sister, you would be so kind, what is an atmospheric river?
An atmospheric river is a narrow, long belt or ribbon of high water vapor content. It tends to be longer than is wide, so it's kind of narrow but long. And what happens is it transports moisture from the tropics to the poles.
Okay.
So that's an atmospheric river. It's just a long, narrow belt of high water vapor content.
Okay. And you said specifically there's a transfer of moisture from the more tropical areas on the planet to the poles. So north or south?
Yes. So if you're in the northern hemisphere, it's towards
right.
the North Pole, yes.
Yes, ma'am. Understood. Thank you very much. So we're transferring moisture at this point. Now, when we get into the second term, we have a blizzard. So what is a blizzard, Queen?
The National Weather Service defines a blizzard as one sustained or frequent gust of 35 winds of sustained speeds and or gusts of 35 miles per hour. And this has plus considerable blowing and drifting snow and visibilities of a quarter miles or less. And it has to last for at least 3 hours. So you have the wind that whips up the snow, reducing the visibility. So the wind speed has to be 35 miles per hour or stronger. And then you have to have considerable falling snow. So it has to be snowing as well.
Praise be to Allah. So I heard wind speed, I heard visibility, and I heard duration of storm. Very key when we talk about what constitutes of blizzards as opposed to just snow. It's snowing outside. You don't necessarily want to go outside and play in the snow in a blizzard as opposed to just some light or even heavier snow that, is not going to limit your visibility or get us so cold. So we have the atmospheric river, which is basically transporting, if you will, moisture. And we have the blizzard, which is bound by how fast the wind is blowing, how much visibility we have, and how long. All praise is due to Allah. So family, I pray we're taking notes. I pray we're framing our mindset, because this is going to allow us to transport ourselves and really focus in on what our sister has to present to us as it pertains to her presentation. So at this time, we want to see, are you prepared to share with us what you have put together, Queen?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So as we get into that, I definitely wanted to talk a bit more about a bit of your journey, I guess, before we get into the presentation, because I think one of the things that's so easy, it's so easy to kind of just walk outside and you experience weather phenomena, but not think too much of it. So I guess, what would you say in your studies as a meteorologist, in your observations, keeps you engaged and kind of represents maybe a challenge for you, maybe a recent challenge for you in your studies, or as you strive to kind of deepen your level of understanding of weather phenomena?
I would say it's staying up to date, because new ideas and theories come out. The thing is, you have, for example, you get new tools, and so you end up seeing things that you haven't seen before, discovering things you haven't seen before, and so that sparks questions, and it makes you want to learn more. So with me, I'll see something, like something may spark my interest, and then I'd be like, okay, I need to learn more about this, because I'm not going to say that I know everything about the weather, because I don't. Because that would be, well, big-headed of me to say that, or even think that. There's so much to learn about the weather, and I find it so fascinating. Even like, for example, you saw the tornado that happened in Houston recently. Yes, like I'll watch video footage of tornadoes, because just seeing the motion of the clouds, or more likely, actually, like the debris. It may seem like, this stuff flying in the air, but sometimes, you can see some other little things, like maybe a little bit another rotation, or like with the Houston tornado, it was a rain-wrapped tornado. And I live up here in the Pacific Northwest, so we don't see these big monster tornadoes coming through wrapped in rain. So I was fascinated by how, this rain-wrapped tornado, and you could barely see it, and I see it crossing this highway, and how, actually that's pretty terrifying. I actually have a radar image of the tornado. I'll show it later. It's actually in my presentation. But what's fascinating is that we're now we could see a tornado using tools like radar. But then I think, how can we improve? Because, when the radars, the coverage is not totally great. There's gaps, how, sometimes I'll just start thinking about how we can come up with a new, like a radar system that's not unlike what we have now, but something where everybody has their own portable, little, small, something really small radar. They can just step out in their yard and just, use it to detect storms all around them, or, if they want to have something like that. So those type of things come to mind. Is usually more along the lines of understanding the weather much better than I know now, and what we all know now. So that's where my interest is. Just trying to understand it a lot more, because you're taught in school, you're taught theories, but theories change when you get new information. Like, for example, with El Nino Southern Oscillation, a long time ago, it was like a huge thing, like, oh, this is totally new. We've never seen this before. This is new. But then, that's because you have tools to see things or detect things that you didn't have before. So it wasn't like it was something new. It's just that you're just now seeing it. And that's how I see the weather. And in fact, last time I was on the show, someone had asked a question about earthquakes and weather. And I thought about it some more after the show, when I came across this article that talked about shallow earthquakes, and how they have an impact on the atmospheric pressure, but it's really small, very small. They can propagate all the way up to the ionosphere. I'm like, whoa, that is fascinating. I had no clue. I had no idea. You learn something new every day. So the article is very technical. It was written by a geologist, somebody studies earthquakes. And but I went through and I found another article and I shared it with Brother Tariq. I don't because that would be, I think hopefully you guys can put the link in the description. I see there, link in description. What I did was I found an article that was the least technical of the ones I read. So hopefully the viewers, if they want to check that article out, they at least will be a little bit easier, excuse me, easier to understand. But so I do like to look at the relationship between weather and other disciplines. So like, for example, we have these sunspot activities and everything. And like, okay, so, sometimes most people think, oh, she's wild. She's going up there, way up there, la la land. But sometimes, I think, okay, we have these solar activities. Does there any impact on our weather? Even on a very tiny, minuscule scale. I want to know that. I'm just fascinated. I'm just interested in that, because sun is up there for a reason. So that's how it is with me when it comes to weather. I do tend to, I do have probably very outlandish ideas for a lot of people may think they're outrageous, outlandish ideas, but it's just my way of thinking and processing and trying to understand what I'm seeing, what I'm reading about, and just exploring possibilities. I like to do that, and then I'll just go on the internet and conduct research. And sometimes I can go down the rabbit hole and totally forget that I have other things to do and I have to stop. So, so I'm going to stop right there.
Well, all praise is due to Allah. That was beautiful. You gave me a lot of things to think about. Thank you for, again, expressing your passion. As you were talking, one of the things that kind of stuck out to me is I'm hearing there's a constant desire to learn, to understand, to comprehend, that then feeds your will to go out and research different phenomena to really build a ever updating construct in your mind on what weather is and how we relate to it. And I think that's very important in any discipline, because if you're going to claim or desire to master something, to truly be able to help, yourself, family, community, nation, you're going to have to be one who has a strong desire that then feeds their will. And that takes us into our study guides, building the will. And it all comes back to Islam. So that's beautiful. As you were talking about the I'll call it a pocket radar, I was thinking about, something me and Tariq can maybe get to work on. It seems like something that may need some IP, or in terms of innovation or invention that you may want to look into. So definitely hold on to that. Tuck that away somewhere, write that down, because that could definitely be something to increase not only interest in weather, but people's personal response to inclement weather, things of that nature. So thank you. That's definitely dope. So at this time, family, I think, we've definitely laid a beautiful stage, a strong foundation for getting to our presentation. If you would like to begin trying to share your presentation, we'll get into that and we'll allow you to move with that and get going.
Okay. So I just click on present.
That should be it.
Okay. Let me get it going here.
And then it should show, I believe it should show you your screen that the presentation is on, and you should be able to share from there.
Okay. Oh, I see it. Okay. Okay. I'm going to switch here. Okay, can you see my slide?
No, not as of yet. Not as of yet.
Okay, hang on 1 second here.
Let me see. A change, but it doesn't help us. Okay.
Okay, hang on 1 second here. Okay. Okay, do you see my screen? It looks like a Google document now, but I'm going to share it with you. So can you see it now?
Okay. There we go.
Okay.
There we
Great.
go.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready, sis.
Okay. So, assalamu alaikum, peace be unto you. My presentation is going to be on winter storms. It's part of a Watch the Weather series. The topic of winter storms is very it's quite broad. There are a lot of elements to discuss. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to limit it to subjects that have recently caught our attention in the news. So with that, the focus will be on bomb cyclones, atmospheric rivers, and blizzards. And then what I'm going to do is wrap it up with some little more information or something that we should think about when we hear the phrase "watch the weather." So, what's a bomb cyclone? So, the definition that is used is a surface pressure falls of 24 millibars or more in 24 hours. And the reason there's an asterisk there because it actually depends on your latitude. So there's actually an equation for it, where the threshold for a bomb cyclone, if I recall correctly, is like 24 sine of theta divided by the sine of 60 degrees. So theta would be the your latitude. But for the most part, meteorologists use the 24 millibars in 24 hours, which is actually for a latitude of 60 degrees. Like, for example, if you're 45 degrees latitude, it will be more like 19.6 millibars in 24 hours. So you can imagine, like, these storms that are farther south of 60 degrees latitude, and they're having a pressure fall of 24 millibars or more in 24 hours. So you can get a sense of how powerful that storm is. So here's a picture of the bomb cyclone that approached the California coast. That was earlier this month. And it had already bombed out before reaching the coast. Most bomb cyclones that impact the West Coast happen, they actually bomb out over the Pacific Ocean. The Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean, Atlantic Oceans are hot spots for bomb cyclones. If you're wondering where bomb cyclone, that this term came from, is originally from bombogenesis, a meteorologist talking about a cyclone that undergoes rapid cyclogenesis or rapid development. And that's where you get the pressure falls and threshold in 24 hours. So this is one that was early. This is earlier this month that approached the California coast. It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am. Can I ask you a quick question? I'm sorry. Quick
Yes.
question, just on your point. As you were going through, I just wanted to highlight something. So when you were going into the bomb cyclone, as you started, you were talking about a reduction in surface pressure. So, like, one of the things I think is important too on the platform, we do have a combination of both people who are enthusiasts and experts, and we also have some people who are general audience. So could you break down a bit more that bomb cyclone definition? You talked about a reduction in surface pressure. Like, what does that mean in more like layman's terms, in terms of what we may be seeing over a particular ocean?
Oh, so it's just a pressure fault on the surface pressure. When you have a cyclone over the northern hemisphere, cyclones rotate in a cyclonic motion or counterclockwise, and at the center you have a center, what we call a center of low pressure, and so we typically, at least on the weather charts, we have the pressure in millibars, and so it basically when the pressure falls 1 millibar every hour, that could happen, or millibars in 24. It's just a measure of pressure.
Okay.
Yeah. So when the pressure falls 24 millibars and 24 hours, or more than 24 millibars in 24 hours, then that's when it's considered a bomb cyclone. So the pressure falls. It's an indicator of how strong a storm is. So the lower the pressure, the stronger the storm. So if you recall, like hurricanes,
right?
The lower the pressure, the stronger the hurricane.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you,
and here's one. This is off the East Coast, and this was taken in early January back in 2017. So this happened to be a nor'easter as well. So some nor'easters are bomb cyclones, some aren't. But in this case, it was a nor'easter and a bomb cyclone. And as you can see, it's very beautiful as well. It's nice structure. But many cyclones actually look quite beautiful, like eye candy. Meteorological eye candy.
Yes, ma'am.
So here we have 3 bomb cyclone facts. I have mentioned it before. The majority over in the northern hemisphere occurs over the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. In the USA, they're more common over the East Coast. Like you saw in the previous slide, the bomb cyclone associated with nor'easter. We had a more recent, rare land-based one that happened last month, if you recall, over the Great Lakes region. And that was the one that was responsible for all the snow in Western New York. You know, they had I think it was over 5 feet of snow in some place. Yeah, that blizzard, 70+ mile per hour winds.
Right.
So that was a bomb cyclone. That was a bomb cyclone. It became a bomb cyclone as it moved across the Great Lakes. So pressure just fell rapidly, and it really spun up, and it brought in a lot of cold air into the Midwest, parts of Illinois, Michigan. So the weather was pretty bad. So
yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so that's the thing about bomb cyclones. They tend to produce quite a bit of precipitation, and a lot, very strong winds, even out, excuse me, even over the open ocean. It's not unusual for them to have a hurricane force winds associated with them. So so you can see it actually happens over the land. You get very strong winds, but you can get bad weather, hazardous weather with cyclones or storms that aren't bomb cyclones. But bomb cyclones, you tend to have more of an intense, especially if the low is the pressure center of the pressure, low pressure center is quite low, and it rapidly develops.
Yes, ma'am. So I had something I just wanted to bring up really quickly. So definitely a wealth of information. It kind of gets me thinking, so many of us, we live our lives, we go day to day, we are in certain regions, and we experience certain weather phenomena that is consistent. Like, okay, every day I can expect, and if I'm in Philadelphia, I get a little bit of everything. I get my normal spring, my winter, my summer, my fall. And I rarely see, things like tornadoes or what have you, or hurricanes. But you see in your third point, you say most recent rare land-based one happened over Great Lakes region last month. So it kind of keeps us on our toes, because at any point, we understand, those in the Nation of Islam, that we're in a time that we will be seeing, different weather in diverse places, things that you may not readily see where you're used to seeing one thing, you see something else. So I think it puts me in the mindset of survival and being able to prepare and have certain things on hand, getting education on how to survive if you get hit by a hurricane, hit by a tornado, or earthquake, certain cold versus extremely warm weather. How do you respond to that? Do you have a mitigation plan for your family? Do you know where certain shelters are in the community? So as you learn about weather, in addition to being fascinated and being more educated on how your planet works, you can also protect yourself about things that may adversely impact you and your family. So I think that's very important. And also, just a question for you: why are the bomb cyclones more rare over land as opposed to the oceans? And I guess what really has to happen for them to occur land based, that I guess makes it rare in that case?
Well, over the oceans, you have okay, the Pacific and the Atlantic is a little bit different, but what happens is these storms, cyclones, they need heat, which is fuel, adds fuel to the storm. And let me see, how can I put this? So you have more of those ingredients coming in, because like over the oceans, you tend to be able to tap into subtropical or tropical moisture, unlike over the land. I don't have. Oh, I wonder if I can go back. Hang on 1 second. Let me see if I can go backwards a slide. Oh, you know what? I may be able to answer this question more when I'm talking better with atmospheric rivers, because I have a slide that will show it to you. But but when you get this bomb cyclone, what happens is you get quite a bit of rise. Warm air rises, cold air sinks. So you get rising air motion. And when air rises, what happens is it induces low pressure. So surface low, you start the pressure starts falling at the surface as the air rises. And as that happens and the air rises faster, what happens is you get spin. And then over time, what happens is you get more air evacuating from the top than is entering at the bottom. And as the system spins more, and as you get more warm air getting into it, and it's not just pulling it in from like more the lower latitudes, but also from the release of latent heat and within the clouds. Basically converting water vapor water vapor to condensation. So what happens is, water droplets, or in some cases, actually in other cases, snow. And that's when you do that, you're releasing heat. So, and the system itself leads to, like I said, the warming of the air automatically rises, because warm air is lighter, and it rises as opposed to cold air. And again, so it becomes like I'm trying to get a term for it, but it basically reinforces the system, because it's more as long as it's rising, you start getting this pressure. The pressures at the surface start to lower. They lower in response, and the faster that happens, the faster the pressure drops, and then you get more spin of the system. So
I got you, and it perpetuates itself. I got you. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, until you get a steady state and it reaches equilibrium, and then everything evens out, and then eventually the storm starts to weaken. But yes, yeah, so that the rising air results into causes the pressure to lower, and then you get spin. So you need to have, and then I didn't say this, but you need to also, there's a pressure. Basically moves from high pressure to lower pressure. So you also have, air moves from higher pressure to lower pressure. So you have air coming in from all sides into the low, and it's spinning because of the Coriolis effect. And I don't want to go into too much of that right now, but that is a technical term. It has to do with the Earth spin and
Yes,
how
ma'am.
that's another topic. But what happens is you get the spinning motion and everything's flowing, converging towards the center and the lower atmosphere, but that air is also rising. So it's going up to the top, higher up in the atmosphere, and it's being evacuated out or diverging. And it's doing it pretty fast. So you have to keep replacing the air. So you have to have, early on in the stages, early on in the stage of the storm development, I guess you would say it's somewhat of an unstable system. It's a little bit imbalanced, so to speak. But, you're trying to get, the atmosphere is trying to get everything more into balance. And eventually you do, like I said, you get into equilibrium, and then everything's fairly balanced out. And then eventually, because the fuel is cut off, the storm starts to weaken. There's no longer, strongly rising. It becomes, just storm weakens at that point. It gets cut off from this energy source.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Praise you to Allah. You feel free to continue. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I hope I explained that correctly. I do have trouble getting stuff out of my head.
We all do. I bear witness. It's all good. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
So then I'm going to show you the next slide, and that leads to the next topic. What is an atmospheric river? I explained that in the beginning, but it doesn't hurt to repeat it. So here's an atmospheric river. This was earlier this month. This long cloud that you see here is part of an atmospheric river. I decided not to show the water vapor imagery because it's a little bit harder, more difficult for people to understand. So I decided to use this image, the geocolor image, because this is something more what people are familiar with. Especially if you've flown on an airplane, you're used to looking at clouds from above. So this is one that was approaching the California coast earlier this month. And here's the west side of the western end of it. So you can see how this is over Western Pacific now. So you can see how long this fetch of moisture is. And this is where I mentioned that you get a cyclone tapping into the warmer, more moist air, sometimes in the subtropics, in the tropics region. So this atmospheric river over the Pacific, you can see where it extends. This is January 12th. Yeah, the night of January 12th. And then you can see another one over the Atlantic. So that's you don't, what was I going to say? Yeah, you tend to see atmospheric rivers over the Northern Hemisphere, over the Pacific, and the Atlantic. It's basically like, what we talked about with the bomb cyclones. And what happens is, sometimes these bomb cyclones will tap into an atmospheric river, which is what happened in California a couple of weeks ago. Because, if it gets caught up into a system of a cyclone, it actually will strengthen the bomb cyclone. So, because again, you're getting that warm, moist air into the system, you get more ascent, and the system deepens, or the low pressure falls even further. So you get a more powerful system.
Yes, ma'am. Before you move on, actually, we are actually at a little bit after the halfway point of the show. We want to get into some Black business highlights, as well as some other announcements, and then we'll answer some questions, if that's all right with you. We have a few questions that's trickled in, and we'd love for you to answer those. So at this point, we want to segue into the Black business highlight, and we're going to play a video. And then if Brother Tariq is on, he can go into the remaining of the business highlight. So here we go, family. Praise is due to Allah. And that was the River City Market, your neighborhood grocery store. Eat to live and live well. Brother Tariq, are you on? Would you like to talk a bit more about River City Market? All righty. So I will continue, family. Praise be to Allah. So again, River City Market, eat to live well. This is a local Virginia-based Black-owned market. As you saw, a number of different products from personal care to food, produce, etc. There are specific discounts as pertains to those believers on Nation of Islam as well. We have 15% off on Sundays, free delivery to the mosque in Richmond, Virginia on Sundays, as well as free 1 pound native beans on the first store visit. For those who just want to come patronize and visit, see what's present, you have the store hours Sunday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And we have Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. family. River City Market. At this time, we're going to segue into our next portion, which is our Final Call newspaper promotion. Final Call newspaper.
Now you can get the same uncompromising truth you've come to expect from the Final Call newspaper on all your connected devices. Subscribe to the Final Call digital edition today. Go to subscribe.finalcalldigital.com.
Praise be to Allah. And this week's edition of the Final Call newspaper, 2 traffic stops and 2 Black men dead. The new year has started painfully and tragically for 2 families of Black men who died after police encounters in Los Angeles and Memphis, sparking anger and demands for transparency and justice. Family, for those who don't know, the Final Call newspaper is the flagship news source coming from the Nation of Islam. It's a message dedicated to the resurrection of the Black men and women in America and the world. To get your latest edition digitally, you can go to finalcalldigital.com. That's finalcalldigital.com. Follow at Final Call newspaper on all platforms to see constant updates on different snippets of stories, as well as if you're in the Philadelphia or Richmond areas and want to get your physical edition, tap in with myself, Brother Jabril, or Brother Tariq to learn more. And this week's centerfold article by the Honorable Minister Farrakhan, just wanted to highlight that, and we'll move on. Justice, a prerequisite to life. Family, we don't know what it means to live if we don't have justice, but on top of that, freedom, justice, and equality. Get your latest Final Call newspaper today. A couple more announcements and we will move on. We have our Final Call online store, the self-improvement study guides. If you want to know how to improve yourself and thereby improve your community, as self-improvement is the basis for community development, tap into the online store. You get your self-improvement study guides, volume 1 and 2, $20 each. You have study guides 1 through 9 and 10 through 18. That's at store.finalcall.com or 866-602-1230, extension 200. Again, that's store.finalcall.com, 866-602-1230, extension 200. Again, family, self-improvement is the basis for community development. And last but certainly not least, the crowning event of Black History Month, Savior's Day. The Honorable Minister Farrakhan speaks February 26, 2023 at the Wintrust Arena in Chicago, Illinois. The War of Armageddon has begun. Go to NOI.org. That's NOI.org. And navigate to the Savior's Day link to find your registration and Sunday keynote address tickets. There's still tickets live. Try to come, bring your family, invite a guest. We want everybody to hear the life-giving teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad coming through the Honorable Minister Farrakhan as he talks about this very important topic. So with that, family, Tariq and I will be present. Hope to see you there, but tap in whether you're there or not. So we have several questions. Sister Naeemah, are you still there?
Yes.
Yes. So I want to thank the Black Math Academy. I want to thank the Black Math Academy for always tapping in. He has spammed in a good way the chat with some questions. So we want to get into a few of these. The first being, You mentioned early on some advancements or things from a technological perspective you would like to see in meteorology, but what have been, at least in recent years or last 5, 10, even more years, some advancement in meteorology from a technological perspective or any other perspective you'd like to mention?
Since I really like to look at satellite imagery, I would say the improvements in satellite imagery, that's been really great. That technology, especially the resolution, improvement in the resolution, so you can see detail that we couldn't see before. Details of clouds, and structure of storms. It's just that the details so much better than it was than many years ago. Like if you look at satellite imagery, weather satellite imagery from like 30 years ago, you're like, oh my gosh, how could they figure out anything from this? But nowadays, the GOES 18 and GOES 16 satellites, and they also have like the Himawari 8 satellite that's owned by Japan, I believe. Those satellites, it's amazing the quality of the images that you get, and you can get images updated every 1 minute, especially for storms of interest, like a bomb cyclone, for example, and you don't want to wait every 15 minutes or an hour, depending on the type of image. Like, for example, if there's a severe weather outbreak expected over, the southern plains, you get what they call a mesoscale sector, which is zoomed in over a particular area of interest, which is really great, which you can do with the satellite nowadays. And you can get 1 minute updates. And then also, which is really cool, is you can overlay the lightning data, because the GOES 16 and 18 weather satellites have a geostationary lightning mapper attached to them. So you can see the flashes. You're basically looking at flash count or flash density. So when it's displayed on the satellite image, what we see is these little flashes or colored blobs. I don't have that to show, but it's so I would say the satellite imagery, because I really like to look at satellite imagery. That's something I'm fond of, in particular, of all the weather tools. I particularly like the satellite imagery.
Praise be to Allah. I can understand how that would be important, getting crisper and more clear resolution in your pictures, because I guess depending on how fuzzy one thing can be or clear can determine if you have certain weather phenomena as opposed to something else. And then you could, improperly predict something that could otherwise have been more properly predicted. So thank you. Another question I'd like to go to would be, actually it's going to go to another question, but we'll stay here. Are there things about how the weather is changing that we should be worried about as people? So any types of patterns, any types of just situations that are recurring right now that we as people should be currently worried about?
I would focus more on the extremes, the frequency of the extremes, more how often extreme events are occurring. So it doesn't look like I'll be able to get to that slide, and it doesn't look like we don't have the time. But one of the slides I have, I may be able to. Is it okay if I skip through the slides real quick?
Of course. After this question, we were going to go back into the presentation. But yes, you.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I actually answered that question. So I can go into more detail then, but I would say focus more on the frequency of extreme events. Pay attention to how often these historic, record, catastrophic events, how often they are happening. You want to see, look at the frequency. So if they're happening more frequently, and it seems like they are, that's something you need to focus on. Not just saying, okay, it's snowing today, okay. But look at more how often we're getting floods, how often we're seeing records amount of snowfall, for example. Of course, you're not going to see record amounts of snowfall in the summer, but just look at it and compare it to previous years, recent years. See how often they are happening.
Yes, man. Praise be to Allah. I think it lends itself. Again, we're going to go right into the presentation, but it lends itself to another question Black Math Academy had about the math used in meteorology. I think, bro, if you can kind of listen to what she's saying, you have a lot in terms of data analysis, which could lend itself to statistics, probability, things like that. Data in a certain year when compared to another year to predict certain trends. So we have, specific math disciplines all rooted right up in there that we can kind of pull out just from that statement there. So at this time, we want to go back into the presentation as we go into the last 10 or so minutes of tonight's show. So right where you left off, Queen, you definitely can continue.
Okay, so continuing on with atmospheric rivers. So there is a rating system like the hurricane scale. You also have an atmospheric river scale. So it's based on categories 1 through 5, with 1 being weak or primarily beneficial to exceptional and primarily hazardous. So California, they had 9 atmospheric rivers within a 3-week period, if I recall correctly. So it went from a point where, it was a little bit more on a beneficial end until it was definitely not on a beneficial end, because in the second point, half of California's water supply comes from atmospheric rivers. However, on average, in a typical year, season, they get 5 to 6 atmospheric rivers. But like I said, they had 9 in a 3-week period. So that exceeds the how many they get in a season. And they normally don't get them back to back like that. That's like 3 atmospheric rivers a week. And that's like excessive. And that's the reason you can see all the flooding, the landslides, etc. I mean, that's just a disaster. That's way too much rain and precipitation. Although the mountains got a lot of snow, so that's good as far as the snowpack. But too much of a good thing is not so great. Not all the time. Some may say, well, they were in a drought and it's better. It's better. So all this rain but a lot of the rain it ran off. It didn't soak into the ground, and we'll get to that in another slide. And this last point here is it can transport as much water as 20 Mississippi rivers. So that's, when a Mississippi River has normal amount of water in it, because we know that the Mississippi has been in a drought, and so the water levels are low this year. But in a normal year, 20 Mississippi rivers. So that's a lot of water. So here we are talking about drought, and this is from drought.gov. This image was updated actually. The data was updated on the 24th, January 24th. So this is recent, and as you can see, despite all the rain they received in California, they're still in the middle of a drought. So just because it starts raining and you get floods, that doesn't mean the drought is over with, because much of the West, and you can see part of the plains that have been in a drought for quite some time. It looks like it has gotten better, like in parts of Arizona and some areas. But California, it has lessened, so it's not as bad as before, but it's still in a drought. So when you think about rain, too much rain is not good, because it's very destructive, and not enough rain is also just as bad, because now you have to worry about your crops. I mean, even with too much rain, you can drown your crops and remove the topsoil from flooding. But when you don't have enough rain, crops dry up and wither. You start wondering where you would get water, and that's an issue some Western states are facing right now, possibility of running out of water. So, and then, like we said, we said the Mississippi, if you recall from a few months ago, the Mississippi was running way low. That was due because of drought conditions, and that affected shipping. So, if you recall correctly, I mean, if you recall from the news, not correctly, but from the news, you saw that where they have to figure out ways to ship supplies without using barges, because some of the shipping barges were getting stuck because there wasn't enough water.
Great point. Great point. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So the next one is, what's a blizzard? Here's the answer again: sustained wind or frequent gusts of 35 miles per hour or greater, and very important, considerable falling and or blowing snow that frequently reduces visibility to less than a quarter of a mile. These conditions must last for at least 3 hours. So if it's less than 3 hours, it's not a blizzard. So if it's 3 hours or longer and you have these conditions, then it's classified as a blizzard. And again, this is the National Weather Service definition of a blizzard. Okay, it's not to be confused with a ground blizzard. A ground blizzard is when you have strong winds just whipping around snow, causing whiteout conditions, but you don't have snow falling. Skies could be clear. But it is a hazard especially to drivers, because you can't see, because all the snow drifting, blowing and drifting snow is, obscuring your visibility. A snow squall is something that's very short duration. It comes and goes. You may have just suddenly you're driving and, it's not bad at all. And suddenly the snow just dumps on top of you, get some gusty winds, and now you can't see. Again, that's a driving hazard. But a snow squall is not a blizzard. It's also not a winter storm because, again, it's a very short duration. You can think of it as like a heavy downpour, heavy shower that comes through and is gone in less than an hour. So
I was thinking something similar. It comes down really quickly, low visibility, yes, but then it dissipates really fast.
Exactly. And so, but you can imagine when you're driving, how it is when it's snowing heavily, it's hard to see. So if you're driving and suddenly, boom, just like that, your visibility is gone because this heavy dump of snow popped up on you. It's a traffic accident waiting to happen, especially if you're not paying attention. And, it can be even more treacherous if temperatures are falling rapidly. And now you're getting the roads are getting icy. So, it can be a mess. Also, a nor'easter is not a blizzard. Some nor'easters are blizzards, but not all blizzards are nor'easters. So, in fact, some nor'easters just produce rain. It doesn't always produce snow. So that's something to keep in mind. So here are the 3 USA blizzard facts. If you exclude Alaska, the majority of blizzards occur in the northern Great Plains and New England states. Especially, like the Dakotas. So that's where you're going to have the highest probability of a blizzard. Again, outside of Alaska, it's in the Dakotas, Northwest Minnesota, and in Maine. And the average number of blizzards per year is 13. And this is from a study that was in the Journal of Applied Meteorology and Climatology. And I can't click on the link. So that's based on a study.
I had something quick, if you don't mind. You made me think of something when you mentioned Maine. For those who know or don't know, a part of what I do as an engineer is shipboard system testing and engineering oversight. And one of the places that I and my group go to is Maine. And I remember the first time I went to Maine, I don't remember if I was experiencing a nor'easter or a blizzard, but in my lack of the proper scientific understanding of what a blizzard was, that's what I felt like I was experiencing when I went there. Talk about not only low visibility, but steady, thick downpour of snow, the snow level on the ground rising rapidly. So I bear witness to blizzard, or at least blizzard type conditions being found in Maine, because that's literally what welcomed me when I got off the plane. So I just wanted to kind of give that really quick anecdote, because I bear witness to that heavy.
Thank you for sharing.
Yes, ma'am.
That was interesting. I thought it was funny when you said that's what greeted you off the plane.
Yes, ma'am.
So watch the weather, and we're familiar with the phrase "watch the weather." So I put this definition of one of the definitions of watch from dictionary.com. I'll read it aloud. To keep under view or observation as in order to see or learn something, view attentively or with interest. And I want to emphasize to learn something, so that watching the weather is not just a passive activity. Something you should think about is, okay, I'm watching the weather, I'm seeing all this bad weather in California. The question should come to mind, can something like this happen in my area? That's the first thing you should think. If you're sitting, like, I don't know, in Arkansas, for example, and you see all this horrible weather going on in California, you should ask yourself, can that happen here? And am I prepared for something like that? Is my city prepared for something like that? Those are the type of questions that should come to mind. It shouldn't be just saying, whoa, wow, look at this bad weather, and just look at the images and, drama and all that stuff, like you're watching, I don't know, a television show or something. But it should spark something in your mind, like, am I prepared? Can something like that happen where I am? This is a Houston, Texas tornado. I thought I would show it again. For the sake of time, I can't talk about every aspect of winter weather, because winter weather, it comes in a variety. You have ice storms. It can produce severe thunderstorms, heavy snow, heavy rain, damaging winds, everything in between. But it would take a lot longer for me to go through all that detail. But since Houston, it came up, we had this tornado recently. I figured I'll briefly mention it because we do get tornadoes in the winter. There's this misconception that it doesn't happen. Actually, in the southern part of the United States, Gulf states, particularly like, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and the southeast part of Texas, they tend to see more tornadic storms in the winter than in the spring. Although spring is the period where you most likely see the most tornadoes, but it tends to shift more towards the plains, and that's something if you guys are willing, you all are willing to bring me back on the show. Maybe in March I can talk about thunderstorms, because in the spring we have tornadoes, because thunderstorms is a topic by itself. But going to the slide here, I annotated it. This top image here is a radar velocity image. Okay, there's certain colors I can't see very well. This looks like, I don't know, pink or magenta or something.
Like pinkish red, yep. Mm-hmm.
This is supposed to be red. So the yellow arrows are telling you how this mesocyclone or thunderstorm is spin. So it's a spinning system. The tornado's way down in here somewhere, but the storm is spinning, and that's showing a cyclonic spin. And you can get that from a Doppler radar. The radar is down here, Houston's radar. So you can see the circulation, and that's what meteorologists. I mean, they already had a tornado warning out at this point, but when they see something like this, they know, oh my gosh, we have trouble here. And like I said, it was a rain-wrapped storm. So, visually it would have been much harder to see the tornado, as we saw from some of the video. It was kind of difficult to see the tornado in the rain, the heavy rain, because it was really coming down. This right here, this image here, this radar image, I highlighted this. This is what we call a tornado tornadic debris signature, TDS, or debris ball. So what you're seeing here, this indicates that there's debris has been lofted up by the tornado. So that's a good confirmation that there's a tornado on the ground. So we talked about new tools. So that's the dual pole radar. I mean, that was a great tool because now you can see things that you couldn't see before, like tornadic debris signatures, a debris ball, and debris that's picked up by tornado. You couldn't see that before in radar imagery. So that's something that happened, I think that was about 10 years ago, I think. That's something new that meteorologists can now look at. You got more detail about storms that you didn't have before, especially tornadic storms. So now I'm going to go into the homework. And you mentioned this before, Brother Jabril. This is how this is important. This is the homework. And this is where we go into, preparedness and not just looking at storms and, say, oh, I need to, whether or not I need to wear a coat or anything like that. So for your homework, and this is in the resources, you have some links. The link should be in the description below. So actually some resources where you can get the normals, means, and extremes for your area. So the things that you need to be looking out for is what's normal for your area? What are the normal temperatures? What's the hottest that's ever recorded, or the coldest? What's the highest wind ever occurred in your area? There are climate sites, but you may not have one exact. There may not be one for your site in particular. If you live in a big city, there is one. But if you're in a smaller town, there may not be one. But you should at least look at it up for your state. So that gives you an idea how bad things can get, because like, for example, here up in the Pacific Northwest, we had a couple of years ago, we had temperatures, around 110 degrees. Well, that was bad because most people up here where I live they don't have air conditioning. So you can imagine how that was, having Phoenix, Arizona weather up here in Seattle, Washington. That's horrible. And there, caused other problems as well. So again, these are extreme events. So look at how cold it is. We heard about, and what's going on in Jackson, Mississippi, where when they have cold snaps, it affects their water supply. They had flooding this past summer. That affected, the water quality. They're in a, really bad situation right now. And that's where I have the question, is your city's infrastructure in good shape? Maybe you can call Public Works and ask them questions about the infrastructure. You probably don't want to ask them, is it in good shape or not? But just find out about your city. When was the last time they upgraded, the sewer lines or something? Those are good questions to ask, because that will give you some idea of, things get really bad, what you can expect, so you're not blindsided. You don't want to be blindsided by hazardous events, especially like weather. So, look up, how, what's the heaviest amount of snow that's ever fallen in your area? You may think, oh, it's never snowed in my area. But like, for example, you may live in Phoenix, Arizona, and think there's never snowed in Arizona. Well, yes, it has. But it was like a long time ago. I think it was like an inch. That's the record. So what happens if there's there's a big storm, snowstorm, and it produces like 3 inches in Phoenix? Well, you can imagine that would be a big mess. So those are the things you can look for. How often does a tornado occur in your state? If you're in Texas, you're familiar with the tornadoes. But up here in the Pacific Northwest, we don't get many tornadoes, but it's happened. It's like, I believe there's tornadoes have occurred in every state in the USA, even in Alaska. So something I guess what the point I'm trying to get at is, don't assume that something's never going to happen at where you live. I mean, there's certain things you can rule out. Like, for example, if you live in Colorado, you don't have to worry about a hurricane coming into Colorado unless there's a drastic change in the USA's coastline. But you should have, you may not get a hurricane, but you could get hurricane force winds. And if you live in the Colorado area, especially eastern Colorado, you probably are aware of that. So like on the West Coast, you don't have to worry about hurricanes, but you can have a bomb cyclone off the coast, bring all sorts of bad weather and hurricane force winds to your area. So that's the important point, is that don't just assume that, because you've lived in your area for, 30 plus years. And since you've never seen it happen, it's never going to happen. I wouldn't think that way. I wouldn't be so assured about things like that, because then you become complacent. And then when things happen, you're going to be like totally caught off guard. And that's not a good way to go. Also, even like, sometimes, National Weather Service will issue warnings about a certain event. And, sometimes people think, oh, it'll never happen here. It's not going to happen in my place. And then it does. And since they weren't prepared for it because they didn't think it was going to happen, they're left in dire straits. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. Get ready. So strive for at least 3 months worth of supplies. You hear 3 days or 3 weeks, but as we've seen, months later, people still have trouble, especially, after these hazardous events happen, especially these extreme events. It usually takes longer. So you want to at least strive for 3 months and make sure you have enough food and water. And then think about how many people are in your family. You also need to figure out a way how to heat up your food. And things like that. Like for example, my sister, she lives in Texas, so she was impacted by that ice storm they had. It was like last winter or the winter before, I can't remember. But they had no power. So, and then I think they had no water at one point. So you have to figure out, okay, how am I going to flush my toilets and stuff like that. So things like, those are things you have to think about. And I also want to say, whatever you do, if your power goes out and it's really cold and everything, and if you have a barbecue grill, please do not bring it in your house and turn it on, because that is bad.
Yes, ma'am.
You will die. Don't do that. That's a bad idea. So, and generators, gas powered generators, those stay outside. Also, if you live in a quake prone area, I would strongly recommend that you get flameless candles. Stock up on flameless candles, not the ones with the flames, because what if there's an earthquake and a candle topples over? Now you have a fire in your house. So that's like from bad to worse. So those are things to think about. And another point is, if you're totally, you're like, I'm ready. 6 months worth of supplies stored up. I'm good to go. But remember, half of your bowl of soup belongs to your brother or sister. So if you know somebody who's struggling, they live paycheck to paycheck or have no paycheck, please help them out. If you can do that, just, kindly just do that, help them out. Because some people, they just can't. They would love to be able to stock up on supplies, but they just don't have the money to do so. So, just keep that in mind too. And to conclude, this goes back to what I mentioned earlier. Pay attention to the frequency and intensity of the weather events. So you want to look at how often, particularly these historic or catastrophic events are happening. Take a note of that. The frequency, how often they're happening. And I think that's it. So I can answer. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much for your time. And I can answer at this point. A couple of questions, 2 or 3. And
praise be to Allah. Well, thank you so much, family. If you enjoyed, you learned something, you just were engaged with the content that our sister just presented, let me get some black fists in the comment sections. Black fists in the comment sections if you enjoyed, were engaged with, or learned something on tonight's presentation and show. Thank you so much, sis. We're actually going to go to what we call our nuclear reactions. This is where we play a video. We'd like you to react and kind of give some insight as to what you see, how we may want to respond to something like this. So at this point, we're going to segue to playing that and getting your response.
Fuck me.
Oh.
Fuck me. Okay, all right. You good? Drop that shit, Kira. Bye. Oh my god. Oh my god.
So just a bit of context, this apparently was a video posted on TikTok coming out of a bomb cyclone out of Los Angeles. So I just wanted to kind of get your general response, your thoughts on the video. Is this consistent with what can be expected in this type of weather event? What might be something to prepare, or just general response to the video?
Well, I believe first thing is that it's important that you know what to do during a flash flood or flooding. I know probably people like to grab their phones and snap pictures and videos, post on their social media sites, but really you should be trying to save your life.
Exactly.
Because automobiles are not safe places to be in during a flash flood. It doesn't take that much water, especially moving water, to carry away your vehicle. So if you can get out, I would get out. I wouldn't get back into a car that's flooded road. I would go to higher ground. It looks like on the side there were some buildings. So you're safer there. So that's the flood. Go to higher ground. Pay attention to the warnings and the forecast for your area, because when flooding is expected, you will get a notice. The National Weather Service is the official source of weather watches, warnings, and advisories. So you will get that. And even if on your phone, like your weather app, it will let you know whether or not you're under weather watch or warning advisory. So pay attention to that. Like, again, you have to pay attention to what's going on around you as far as the weather is concerned, and not just above your head, but also, in states around you, because generally in the United States, storms move from west to east. So you can get some idea from there. There are some exceptions. Sometimes storm will come down from the north, come up from the south, but in many cases from west to east. So flooding, cars are not safe places to be during a flood. It's best to get to high ground.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you so much. And as we move to conclude, family, if you are interested in invention and innovation consultations, you can book those at sciencebyOMS.com. That's sciencebyOMS.com. That's the parent company of the STEM Files Original Man Scientific. Book an invention and innovation consultation with us today. Also, if you are continuing to like, enjoy, engage with, and share the content, and you want to support or endorse the STEM Files today, you can do so at Cash App. That's hashtag the STEM Files, hashtag the STEM Files, or text 770-695-7912 for other methods. Hashtag the STEM Files or 770-695-7912 for other methods. Family, we've been well fed today. There's one thing I'd like to leave us with before we conclude. And for those of us in the Nation of Islam, we're very much aware of this, but I'd like to present it to those just watching in general. This is from our Supreme Wisdom Lessons given to the Nation of Islam by our Savior, Master Prophet Muhammad. It is Lost Sound Muslim lesson number 2, question and answer number 8. It's what makes rain, hail, snow, and earthquakes? And very quickly, the answer is the earth is approximately covered under water, approximately 3/4 of its surface. The sun and moon having attracting power on our planet, while our planet making a terrific speed of 1,037 1/3 miles on its way around the sun. The sun draws this water up into the earth's rotation, which is called gravitation, and a fine mist that the naked eye can hardly detect but as this mist ascends higher and is increasing with other mists of water in different currents of the atmosphere until when she becomes heavier than gravitation, then she distills back to the earth in the form of drops of water or drops of ice, which depends on how heavy the mist was and the current of the air it was in. There are some layers of currents of air, real cold and warm, and some very swift and changeable. So when the water strikes one of these cold currents, it becomes solid ice in small round drops in form or in light fluffy form, which is called snow. But this water is not ever drawn above 6 miles from the Earth's surface by the sun and moon. The reason it rains back on our planet is because it cannot get out of the Earth's sphere. With its high speed of rotating around the sun, makes it impossible. Lastly, earthquakes are caused by the Son of Man by experimenting on high explosion. In fact, that all the above is caused by the Son of Man. Keep that in mind, family. Let's continue to study. Let's continue to be aware of our surroundings. Let's continue to just open ourselves up to knowledge, wisdom, and understanding in a time where we know people will disavow and not lean onto or listen to sound doctrine. And there's a lot of information out here to tickle our ears. So with that, family, I truly, truly appreciate it. Thank you, Sister Kasima, for tapping in. I know we couldn't get to your question, but I pray you were well fed. Yes, all generals are for every day. The Black Math Academy, appreciate you. Appreciate you, X-Man. Definitely taking notes. Sister Naeemah, as we close, is there any final words you'd like to leave us with before we close tonight's show?
Just keep watching the weather with the idea to learn something.
Yes.
And thank you for inviting me to your show.
Absolutely. And we can definitely do a seasonal thing. I know you mentioned coming back on the platform maybe in the springtime. If that's something you'd like to do with a different topic, we definitely welcome that. And until next time. So family, I am your brilliant engineer, always joined by my co-host tariqcardiac. This is our sister Naeemah Cushmeer, meteorologist. What brings rain, hail, snow, and earthquakes? Until next time, family, we love you. We appreciate your support. We are signing off. This is the STEM Files, the voice of STEM talent in Black culture. Peace, family.
Believe in these false prophets, I say I bet he lying. No football, New York City Giants. Girl dad, rest in peace to Kobe Bryant. When we teaching our babies, we teach them heavy science. Heavy science. Heavy science. When we teaching our women, we teach them heavy science. Heavy science. Heavy science. When we teach men, we teach them heavy